Welcome back to my channel, welcome back to my video. Today a new video in the episodes in regards to prepping. In this episode I will do it a little bit different. We're not going into the risk assessment, we're going into a couple of other things today. And yeah, let's see what the video brings. I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy this series, please let me know. Thanks for watching and thanks for subscribing if you are subscribed. So let's start with the video. So today I want to talk a little bit about the environment that I'm living in. And so I've made a couple of videos during one of my walks, and just to show you what the area looks like that I'm living in. So as you can see, it is some fields with corn, it is some forest with some animals here and there, and with trees, pine trees, and just regular oak trees, white birch, stuff like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to recap quickly what we've done so far, and then we're going to do the same, but then for South Africa. And I'm going to show you a couple of videos of where I'm generally staying, and then we can also see what the difference is between what we need for South Africa and what we need for here. Okay, so let's have a look at what we went through so far in the risk assessment. So for the Netherlands, and then we'll do the same for South Africa. So the first thing is the non-venomous insects bite. Then we went to a non-lethal venomous bite, and then light dog bite or scratch, severe dog bite or deep scratch. And the reason why we didn't go to venomous or lethal bite is because in the Netherlands we don't have those types of animals, but obviously in South Africa we do, so I will highlight it. See, then we had single car accident at low speed, no airbags deployed, minor collision with secondary vehicle, bicycle or airbag deployed. Drinking water is not safe to drink from the tap. Power outage, pollution of the water and power outage. Political unrest, riots, violence, war, financial system collapsing, and I think we were about there. So yeah, for the Netherlands, generally speaking, what we need is, so for insect bites and so on, it's screens, doors, and sleep under a blanket, or even use a hammock or whatever to protect yourself a little bit better. Radio we talked about, a boo-boo kit and a medical kit we talked about. During driving, pay attention, wear sunglasses if needs be, and be aware of your surroundings. Follow the news was a thing, so having bottled water was a thing. Flares we talked about, sunglasses we talked about. Having certain types of injections to be safe, have alternative cooking methods, have flashlights, have batteries, have candles, have maybe a generator or a power bank, hand crank devices, bottled water, food. So that's a couple of things that we talked about: batteries, candles, toilet paper, and obviously a knife. And and then an alternative sleeping position, and with sleeping bags and so on. So basically the simple stuff, the basic stuff, that's where we were till this point, basically, for the Netherlands. Okay, now let's do the same thing, but then for South Africa. So in South Africa we are in the bush, and that means it's drier, and there's a lot of dark hardwood trees, low fields and low bushes, and a couple of bigger trees. There's some streams of water, but obviously there's a lot of mountains. And the first problem with the mountains is that if it rains hard, and we're going into rain season, November, December, and therefore there is a lot of water coming off the hills and going into the valleys below, and you might get massive flooding, like we've seen a couple of times already, that during big rainstorms there's flooding. And something, we do not really see on our end. We do hear about, obviously, I mentioned this, I believe, with the melting snow water from Austria and Germany and so on, that water is also coming towards the sea where we are. But we are managing that water with dams and so on, so that it won't really overflow. And if it does overflow, then the point is that we have specific areas where we are allowing it to flow into, so that it is not an issue. So obviously I won't say we never have flooding of basements and houses, because we do, but generally it is not as bad as some of the other areas or some other countries. If you look in the videos here of South Africa, you can see that there is obviously a lot of, like giraffes and wildebeest and ostrich and a couple of other impalas, for example. They are walking around, but that is only in, farms, lodges, and national parks. If you go outside of these areas, there's nothing, basically. It's a couple of monkeys here and there, and maybe a jaguar or whatever, but even those are very rare. So what you need to understand about South Africa is that, first of all, it's a very big country, and it was a country inhabited by several different tribes, let's say. And the Dutch were one of the first settlers to come to South Africa, together with Germans, and later on the English came as well. And because of that, it's a very mixed culture. There's 11 national languages, just to get an understanding of that. That's how diverse the country is. And obviously South Africa is extremely big. Africa in general is extremely big. For example, like America. Then the big thing in South Africa, for example, also again like America, is that there is not a good system like we have here in the Netherlands, for example. So if you don't have work, then you're unemployed, you don't have money, and you'll literally die. And then if you need to go to a hospital, if you cannot afford a private hospital, basically you're screwed. And then the power outages because of corruption. There's a lot of corruption, and the money is stolen, and it's not getting to where it's supposed to go. So you have bad roads, you have bad educations, you have bad hospitals, you have bad infrastructure. The country is basically in disarray. And if you then understand that this country was one of the leading countries in the world not too long ago, it is sad to see. And it is what it is. But if you are in South Africa, it is a very different environment. Because people are poor, there's a lot of violence. It's easy to get a gun, like in America. Poor people who are desperate, they will go and steal. They will do whatever they need to do to survive and provide for the family. And that is obviously a dangerous situation. Then, because of the gap in educations, you have people that are really smart, and you have people that really, they haven't been properly educated because of culture, because of different reasons. And it's sad, but it is the reality. And for me, working in South Africa, you can clearly see, most people obviously, when they think about South Africa, they think about the safari trips, and every time I say I have to go to South Africa, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, oh, beautiful, I would love to go there. But then they don't understand what I'm actually doing there, and then, when you explain what you're doing, then, they are like, oh, okay, then I'd rather stay in Europe. Let's go to the risk analysis. So first off, in South Africa, there's a lot of things that are venomous, that are dangerous. So there's a lot of venomous snakes. there's venomous spiders, there's scorpions, etc., etc. Then obviously there's a lot of different animals that can be very dangerous, but also, you know, even though when they're not dangerous, when they scratch you or bite you, that is then obviously still dangerous. So if a monkey bites you, for example, that is then still dangerous unless you have the right antibiotics and so on. Okay, so non-venomous insects, same as here. However, the problem is that, for example, the area that I am in, it's generally a 2-hour drive to get to a bigger city on very bad roads. So if you are in a bad condition and you need stitching or whatever, then yeah, you're in serious trouble, because you really have to drive for most likely about 2 hours to get to medical aid. Okay, then so non-lethal venomous bites. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that can bite you or sting you or whatever, that is potentially little venomous, but not to a point where it can kill you. So that is again the same. Now, venomous bite, we didn't talk about it, but when we are in South Africa, we need to talk about venomous bites. There's all these types of things, as I mentioned. You have scorpions, you have spiders, etc., etc. So there's spiders that the toxin of the spider bite will start eating your flesh. There are snakes that can paralyze you, etc., etc. So yeah, in South Africa, the problem is if you get bitten, most likely you're in the middle of nowhere, and to get from the middle of nowhere to a hospital, like I mentioned, is about 2 hours, so it is difficult and it's dangerous. Okay, dog bites, yeah, there's a lot of dogs just roaming around. You know, they're walking through glass, through plastic, whatever, so they might be agitated, they might be poorly taken care of, they might just been hit by a car, because yeah, the roads are not properly lit or whatever, so there's a lot of things that can go wrong there. But yeah, generally speaking, the same things apply as we previously talked about. Drinking water is not safe to drink. Yeah, we talked about drinking water in South Africa due to corruption, poor maintenance, because the money just doesn't get where it needs to go. So for example, water filtration systems, they should, for example, change their filters every year, and they maybe change every 10 years. Because it's just no money, because it all went to the wrong things, let's call it that. So drinking water in South Africa is in a bottle. You cannot drink the water from a tap. You have to boil it. There are some places where you can drink it, but generally speaking, in the area where I am, you cannot drink the water from the tap. Power outage, you cannot imagine, but a power outage is normal in South Africa. It is daily life in South Africa. So that means on average 2 to 3 times a day you're at least for 1 hour without power. Can you imagine trying to work and then, you know, you just have to do something else because the power is off for an hour, and then you can go back to work? But that is on a good day. On a bad day, you're 6-7 hours a day without power. Can you imagine your refrigerator with all your steak and whatnot? So, and then obviously that is also a problem with, you know, basically everything. Because if you don't have power, your camera isn't working, your oven or whatever you have isn't working. So basically nothing is working because you have no power. And so you cannot work, you cannot do other stuff, you cannot watch television or whatever. So a lot of people have solar panels. Well, solar panels is starting now, but most people have a generator. Okay, then let's go to the next one. Is simultaneous polluted water and power outage. That's everyday life in South Africa, so they are prepared for it. So they have water storage, they have generators and stuff like that. Some people now start to buy solar panels and so on. So yeah, that is now starting to get into it. Then political unrest and riots and violence. Well, it is South Africa. That is, again, almost everyday life. I think it's about 1,650 people every month are killed by violence in Johannesburg alone. Yeah, besides violence, there is political unrest, obviously with low wages, people and the high costs of living. People are striking, people are trying to get the attention of the government, and sadly, the government doesn't really do enough. Let's put it that way. Okay, war. South Africa is supporting Russia in some sense, so they are quite close to Russia in some sense, so but also close to Europe, so they're a little bit in the middle, and that doesn't help, obviously, but basically there is a struggle for employment, there's a struggle for food, there's a struggle for proper compensation, healthcare and all those stuff, so it's not so much a war, but there is definitely a struggle, and in surrounding countries, there has been unrest as well, and it's just difficult. It's just difficult in a country like South Africa at the moment. Okay, next one is financial system collapsing. Doesn't really matter how you look at it, but with the amount of corruption that South Africa has, you can speak of a collapsed financial system, because people do not get paid a proper salary to live off, and therefore you get violence, you get murder, you get criminals, etc., because everybody is trying to survive. And in that sense there is a collapse of the financial system, because people cannot find a job, they cannot do what's right, even though they want to do what's right, and therefore they have to resort to other means to get stuff done, basically. So okay, let's go to 14 and 15 and 16, 17 as well. So 14 is a tsunami, 15 is earthquakes, 16 is a sinkhole, 17 is an avalanche or mud/rock slide. Now, first point, 14, tsunami. Well, not so much a tsunami, but there was quite recently actually a very big flood in the harbor area of South Africa. I think it was at the beginning of this year, so early 2024 or late 2023. There was a massive flooding of the harbor and the villages around it. So that was not nice, obviously, and a lot of people lost a lot of stuff. So not nice at all. Earthquakes. I personally haven't heard anything about earthquakes, but what I do know, and I don't know if it's really an earthquake, but apparently there's a tear running through Africa. There is some type of literally like a tear in the Earth's crust that is literally kilometers long, and that is widening as we speak, basically. And maybe you should look that up. But I don't think it's an earthquake, but it's almost like the tectonic plates are splitting up. There's obviously, with all the mines, all the minerals that South Africa have, they originate from volcanoes. But as far as I know, South Africa doesn't really have active volcanoes. Then sinkholes. Sinkholes is actually a thing in South Africa, because you have the legal mining and you have the illegal mining, and the illegal mining will sometimes, for example, go into mines that are closed and take out supports, because the support in a mine will generally be a pillar, which is a piece of rock that they left deliberately to hold up the roof. And in those pillars is obviously gold or whatever they are trying to find. So people are going in and cut those pillars out, basically, to get to the gold. It's obviously quite easy at that stage, but obviously very risky, because those pillars are there to support the roof. So if it collapses, then you collapse most probably also what's on top. And if there's a suburb above, for those of you who don't know, South Africa or Johannesburg was built on a gold reef. Basically, there was the earth cracked open and exposed a gold reef, and that's basically Johannesburg was a gold city, or a miner's city. So under Joburg there's still some mines. So if they take out those supports, it has happened when I was there that in some place very far from me there was a sinkhole because a piece of ground collapsed underneath. And obviously this can also be from a burst water line, but it can also be from mines that are, let's say, sabotaged. And the last one, then, avalanches or mud/rock slides. Yeah, well, I've seen it several times where I am, where I stay, that from the mountains there's a big downpour and just so much water flows into the rivers that it basically becomes a mudslide. You saw it, one of the videos that I showed, where the river is just one big brown soup. And yeah, so it is something that is actually happening. So now that we've talked about all the prepping and all the different scenarios with South Africa, let's have a look at what is different between the Netherlands and South Africa. So first of all, we have venomous animals. How do you prepare in South Africa for venomous animals? Yeah, you might have some antivenoms for some of the animals, but most probably not for all. There's spiders, the scorpions, and so basically, when I'm there, I check my shoes before I put them on. I check around my bed when I go to sleep, so there's not a big spider somewhere hanging around or a scorpion. So it's stuff like that needs to be in your everyday routine, basically. Then on the other hand, with the power outages, you need a transformer or you need solar panels. Then with the water supply, you need to have a water storage system, either by rainwater and then have osmosis system or something like that you can permanently use, filtration systems or whatnot. And then obviously flashlights and stuff like that. And if you want, and obviously, for example, in a country like South Africa or America, hunting is still allowed, is still a thing that is done by a lot of people, and it's also to keep in check the population of the animals. In the Netherlands, because we're such a small country, it's not. But a gun for hunting, for example, and providing food is an option that you have available. Fishing gear, I like to fish as well when I'm in South Africa, also when I'm in the Netherlands, but I don't have the time when I'm in the Netherlands generally. So hunting gear, for example, or a gun, a knife, stuff to make fire, proper firewood, and obviously in South Africa everybody loves to braai, so most people will have a braai, so that gives you an alternative cooking method as well, and most people will have propane bottles, for example. So in a lot of things, South Africa is already very prepared. And that's also the joke I make, that if there is a zombie apocalypse, you want to be in South Africa. Why? Because they have guns. They all have their house, with barbed wire fences and floodlights and dogs and gates and all that stuff. Transformers, water supply, everything is already there. Why? Well, because of the violence, because of the political unrest, because of, rainfall, because of riots, because of all those things, people are generally very well prepared. South Africa is a natural prepping country, basically. So for South Africans, basically everything that I've told so far is natural to them. Most, obviously if you can afford it, but if you can afford it, this is natural. And besides that, a lot of South Africans eat pap and millies, which is a food that you can buy in bulk, and it's just basically pouring boiling water over it, and preferably broth or whatever, and it's a meal that can really fill you up properly. And some people like it. I personally don't like it if I don't have to eat it, but it's South African standard food basically to eat, and it's very easy to make, and it's very easy to make in bulk, and it's a lot of calories. It's easy, and that's also why a lot of people in South Africa eat pap and millies, because it's such a good food.
for energy density, basically. Yeah, so preparation-wise, in South Africa, you know, you have water, you have power supply, you have basically everything you need to survive, because that's almost day-to-day stuff for them. So yeah, that's obviously it's different. I mean, for example, in the Netherlands, we hardly ever have a power supply issue, but in South Africa, it's a daily thing. And you know, with the water, the same. We can drink the water from the tap anywhere, and in South Africa, in most places, you can't. So people are much more prone to have water available, or a water cleaning system available. You know, people love to braai in South Africa, so they all have something to make a fire with in the house, and wood and whatnot, because, you know, generally most people will braai at least 3 times a week. You know, and also in South Africa, the food is much cheaper, and therefore to have, for example, 10, 13 kgs of meat in the fridge is much more normal than here, because here, you know, buying meat is so expensive that you only buy what you need. So yeah, that is basically a couple of comparisons and a couple of differences. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.